Putting in progress, Boker Tov. Okay, welcome back, everyone. So, Masechet Beitzah Daf Yud Chet Amud Bet. We are concluding now the sugya discussion about Tfilat Kelim B'Yom Tov, Tfilat Kelim on Yom Tov and on Shabbat. Again, to remind you that the Tfilat Kelim that we are discussing here, at least at the moment, is not the Tfilat Kelim that we do nowadays. I think we spoke about that last time. And we saw four different reasons in the Gemara as to why, we won't go over them now, but we saw four different reasons as to why we could not do Tfilat Kelim on Shabbat and Yom Tov. And we said depending on which reason would apply, that's talking about Tfilah from Tumah and Torah. However, nowadays, that the Tfilah is for a different purpose, it's a different type of Tfilah, would that still be an issue? So if we accept the reason that it's Shema Yasheh or Shema Yishchot, for example, that reason would not apply nowadays. However, the other reasons would apply. Okay, we discussed that at length. So we now pick up Yud Chet Amud Bet at just past halfway, after the two dots, right? The Gemara quotes the Mishnah that says Shavin shemashikin et hamayim b'kli even. Okay, let's maybe go back a second and just look at the Mishnah one moment. So we saw the end of the Mishnah said, right? We saw Machloket Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, and then the Mishnah said Shavin. Okay, so we distinguish here, and the Mishnah specifically says Kli Even, because a Kli Even is not Mekabel Tuma. So therefore, if you want to do Hashaka, meaning you want to bring your water, which has become Tameh, and make it Tahor by coming into contact with the water of the mikveh, that is okay. You're allowed to do that. And you do it in a Kli Even, meaning there's no Hashash that you're going to come and toivel the Kli itself. A Kli Even does not need Tefillah. However, of a lo matbilin, to come along to, let's say a person says, okay, I want to do Hashaka on my water, and happens to be in a Kli, or Kli 8, or whatever it is, which is Tameh, and I'm going to go ala derech, I'm going to go and I'm going to toivel the Kli. You can't do that. That is Hatbala. So Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, everybody agrees. We're going to see in a moment that not so clear who everybody is. But at this point we say Shavin shemashikin et hamayim b'kli even et taharan aval lo matbilin. You can do hashaka of the water, but you cannot do tfilat kelim on Shabbat and Yom Tov, as we've discussed at length. And then the Mishnah concludes, we'll see this as well. It says matbilin migav legav mechabura lechabura. Okay, so back in Daf Yud Chet Amud Bet, right? So we quote the Mishnah, Shavin shemashikin et hamayim b'kli even v'chole. So we say, "My aval lo matbilin." Amashmoa ein matbilin et hakli al gav meimav letalo b'yom tov. Right. So when the Mishnah says you can do hashaka but you cannot do hatbala, what does that mean? It means you can't bring, as we've just explained. Shmuel says, "Ein matbilin et hakli al gav meimav." Don't come along and say, "Oh, I'm just, I'm just going to do hashaka of the water, and ala derech, I'm going to toivel the kli." No, you're not allowed to do that. Now, the Gemara here asks the question. It says, "Mani matnitin." Okay, whose opinion does our Mishnah follow? As we said, this is the opinion according to everybody by Shammai by Hillel, but it's not clear actually which opinion of the Tanaim is follows. Mani matnitin lo Rebbe v'lo Rabbanan. Our Mishnah seems to contradict both the opinion of Rebbe and the opinion of Rabbanan. Let's see why. Again, our Mishnah said that you can do hashaka, but you can't do hatbala. So we say it's lo Rebbe v'lo Rabbanan, the Tanya, because the reason why it doesn't fit is because of the following braita. The Tanya. Ein matbilin et hakli agav meimav letaharo, ve'ein mashikin et hamayim b'kli even letaharan divrei Rebbe. V'chachamim omrim matbilin kli agav meimav letaharo, mashikin et hamayim b'kli even letaharan. Okay, so let's break it down. We have two opinions here in the braita. We have Rebbe and Chachamim. Rebbe says, and the Reisha, he says, "Ein matbilin et hakli al gav meimav letaro." You cannot do hatbala of the kli in order to al gav meimav, in order to make the kli tahor. Okay, that's exactly what we said in our Mishnah, right? Ein matbilin et hakli al gav meimav letaro. So that's fine. However, that's only half of his opinion. He continues, "Ve'ein mashikin et hamayim b'kli even letaharan." So Rebbe says, forget about it. You have a kli or you have water. Right? We assume at this point we're talking about Shabbat and Yom Tov equally. So he says you cannot bring that to the mikveh. You can't do hatbala and you can't do hashaka. So our Mishnah is clearly not like the opinion of Rebbe. Why? Because our Mishnah said that you can do hashaka and Rabbi says you can't. Rabbi says right? He says you can't do hashaka or hatbala. So that is opinion number one. Now, opinion number two, the Braita continues. So that was the very Rabbi. V'chachamim omrim matbilin kli agav meimav lataro umashikin et hamayim b'kli even lataran. So the Chachamim say you can do hashaka, but the Chachamim say you can also do hatbala. In other words, according to Rabbi, everything is asur. According to Chachamim, everything is mutar. And according to our Mishnah, one is mutar and one is asur. So our Mishnah does not fit. It doesn't fit Rabbi. It doesn't fit the opinion of Chachamim. Okay, so we're a little bit stuck. That's what the Gemara is asking. So again, so we said mani matnitin. Who does our Mishnah follow? Lo Rabbi v'lo Rabbanan. Doesn't follow Rabbi. Doesn't follow Rabbanan. Titania ein matbilin takli agav meimav lataro, which that line matches with our Mishnah, but it continues for ein mashikin et hamayim b'kli even lataran, which is the opposite of what we said in our Mishnah. So that is the opinion of Rabbi. And Chachamim omrim matbilin kli agav meimav lataro mashikin, which is the opposite of our Mishnah. Our Mishnah said you can't do that. Umashikin et hamayim b'kli even lataran, which our Mishnah said you can do. But it said you can't do the first thing. So, mani. Who do we follow? Which opinion? So answers the Gemara, it says, I Rabbi, well, before we get to the answer, right, it says, I Rabbi kasha shaka, I Rabbanan kasha hatbala. Right? If you say that it's Rabbi, so you have the kasha of hashaka, because Rabbi said you can't do hashaka, and our Mishnah said you can. I Rabbanan, if you say that it's the opinion of Rabbanan, well then kasha hatbala, opposite. Then the Rabbanan said you can do hatbala, and we said you can't. So, answers the Gemara, this is often the type of structure that we see with these kind of questions. Ibait Ema Rebbe, Ibait Ema Rabbanan. Actually, if you want, you could say that it's Rebbe, and if you want, you could say it's Rabbanan. It actually is compatible with both of them. How is that possible? How can it be that we just said it's not compatible with either opinion, and now you're saying it's compatible with both opinions? So the key is, said before, that we're talking about Shabbat and Yom Tov, right? And we assumed that Shabbat is the same as Yom Tov. But notice it doesn't mention actually anywhere in the Mishnah or anywhere in the Braita whether we're talking about Shabbat or Yom Tov. And therefore, we could make a distinction between the two. And that's we're going to have to make a distinction between the two, and that's going to help us understand who our Mishnah follows. So we say like this, Ibait Ema Rebbe, Ibait Ema Rabbanan. Ibait Ema Rebbe, Reisha de Braita be Yom Tov, V'seifa b'Shabbat, v'kula matnitin b'Yom Tov. So we say, if we say that it's like Rebbe, we'd have to explain the following, right? Reisha de Braita b'Yom Tov, v'seifa b'Shabbat. That within the Braita, okay, the Braita that we quote on this Amud, within the Braita, Rebbe is talking about, is relating to both Shabbat and to Yom Tov. He's relating to Yom Tov and to Shabbat, rather, I should say. Right, and the Mishnah is talking entirely about Yom Tov. In other words, what do we mean? So in our Reisha, we said in our Braita, we said Reisha de Braita on the last line of the Amud. Now we said Reisha de Braita be Yom Tov. So Rebbe comes along. What did Rebbe say? Rebbe said in the Braita, he said, Ein matbilin takli agav meimav latarov, ein mashikin et hamayim b'kli even ataran. So then Gemara is now suggesting that the Reisha is talking about Yom Tov and the Sefer is talking about Shabbat. When Rebbe says Ein matbilin takli agav meimav letaro, that is talking about Yom Tov. When he says Ein mashikin et hamayim b'kli even letaran, that is talking about Shabbat. In other words, we assume again there is more reason over here. We assume there's more reason to be machmir on Shabbat. Rather than Yom Tov, right? That on Shabbat we're going to be even more machmir to say no hashakas. What Rebbe is essentially saying in the Braita is the following: he's saying on Yom Tov, ein matbilin etzakli agav meimav letaro. In other words, on Yom Tov you cannot come and toivel the kli. Okay. What about hashaka? Hashaka you could do. That's mutar. And then he says, now on Shabbat, you should know that not only can you not do Hatbala, but on Shabbat also you can't do Hashaka. Okay, so that's what Rebbe is saying. And therefore our Mishnah works perfectly. I mean, our Mishnah is just talking all about Yom Tov. It's a little bit confusing that, here within the Braita, within the one sentence talking about Yom Tov, one sentence talking about Shabbat. But that is not unheard of. It's not actually unusual in the Gemara. Many times you do find Mishnayot and Braitot that are built this way, right? Hachi mechasra v'achi ktani, that we often find technique which the Gemara uses, right? Where we say there's parts there which are not actually stated. Which you have to understand. Rav Hutner, by the way, we're coming up to Chanukah. Rav Hutner has a piece in Pachad Yitzchak on Chanukah where he talks about the structure of the Torah Sheba'al Peh. And he talks about this idea of, for example, the structure of Chisurei Mechasra V'Achiktani. That's one of the most difficult concepts when you start learning Gemara, and it's one of the things you see. Well, if that's what it meant to say, why didn't it say it? Right? Why does it say it in this roundabout, this cryptic way? Rav Hutner has explained that at the end of the day, remember that we're learning at Torah Sheba'al Peh. This was never meant to be written down. Right? This was meant to be transmitted orally from generation to generation, as it was originally. And at a certain point, Rebbe saw that this was not going to end well. He said, "Eit lasod l'Hashem efer Toratecha." The Gemara in Gittin tells us that there is a prohibition of writing down Torah Sheba'al Peh. So how are we allowed to write it down? So that's "Eit lasod l'Hashem efer Toratecha." That when we are concerned, and it needs somebody of the stature of Rebbe to say, but we're concerned for the future status of Torah Sheba'al Peh, that it's going to be lost, that the Torah itself is going to be uprooted. So then we are allowed to transgress that prohibition, and we're allowed to write it down. However, even then, it was still written down in such a way that it retains a certain element where it's actually not understood, and you still need that transmission of Torah Sheba'al Peh. Okay, there's a whole discussion there in terms of that. But in any event, so the way we would read our Braita again is as follows. Based on this, we would say, I'm reading now again in the Braita, so going up a few lines. We said the Tanya, Ein matvilin takli al gav meimav l'taro. That is on Yom Tov. On Yom Tov, there is a limitation of Hatpala. Ve'ein mashikin tamayim b'kli even etara. And that is on Shabbat. On Shabbat is even a sur of Hashaka. In other words, what would be the entire din on Yom Tov? That's exactly what our Mishnah said. Our Mishnah said you can't do Hatpala, but you can do Hashaka. So if we assume like that, then it all works off Levafela. That works according to Rebbe, and that's fine. Okay, over the page, next daf, top of daf Yutet Amud Aleph, we said ve'ibait eima Rabbanan v'kulei matnitin b'Shabbat. And if you want, you could say that it's actually following the opinion of Rabbanan, and then our Mishnah. So the big nafkamina between whether we say like Rebbe or whether we say that it's like Rabbanan is what is our Mishnah talking about. If we accept that it's the opinion of Rebbe, then our Mishnah is talking about Yom Tov. And if we accept that it's following the opinion of the Rabbanan, then our Mishnah is following. Our Mishnah is when it's on Shabbat. In other words, on Shabbat, the Chachamim would agree that you can't do Hatpala. In other words, if we go back and read our Braita, according to Rabbanan, what did Rabbanan say? Right? They said. We said Tanya, ein matpilin takli agav meimav ta'arov, ein mashkin tamayim bekli even ta'aran. It's very Rebbe. And Chachamim omrim matbilin kli al gav meimav letaharo. Okay, umashikin tamayim bekli even ta'aran. In other words, you'd have to read it like this. Rabbanan would say matbilin kli al gav meimav letaharo. You can do hatpala on a kli. When can you do that? That you can do on Yom Tov. Right? Umashikin et amayim bekli even ta'aran. That's even on Shabbat. Even on Shabbat. So then when we read our Mishnah that says you can't do Hatpala, but you can do Hashaka, that's talking about Shabbat according to Rabbanan. Okay, so at the end of the day, it has to fit one of the opinions. Either the Mishnah is talking about Yom Tov and it's following the opinion of Rebbe, who is more, who is more stringent, or it's talking about Shabbat and it's following the opinion of the Rabbanan, who are more lenient in that regard. Okay. Continues the Gemara. Again, we're at the top of Daf Yutet Amud Aleph, second line. Tana Rabbanan. We've spoken about doing Hatpala on Yom Tov itself. Now we're going to get into a discussion regarding Bein Hashmashot. Tana Rabbanan. Kli shenitmame erev Yom Tov. Ein matpilin oto Bein Hashmashot. Rabbi Shimon Shazuri omer af b'chol ein matpilin oto. Okay. So you have a kli now, which was we discussed previously. What happens if it's Idman Erev Yom Tov, and whether you have time to tovel it before Yom Tov or not. But now, so we know that you can't do the tefillah on Yom Tov. What about Bein Hashmashot? Bein Hashmashot is the time right between sunset and nightfall. It's a time which is considered safek yom and safek laila, not because we don't know what the time is, but because we don't know intrinsically whether the time between sunset and nightfall is this still day or is it night. So we judge it as an inherent safek, that it's both. That's why on Shabbat, we've discussed this in the past, that's why on Shabbat we always have to assume that Bein Hashmashot, when Shabbat comes in, we have to assume that it's nightfall, and we have to be machmir that it is Shabbat. But when Shabbat goes out, we have to assume that it's daytime, and we have to be machmir to only take Shabbat out afterwards, right? The end of Bein Hashmashot. Yeah, fair. Now, there are certain things, certain dinim derabanan, for example, which we read in Bameh Madlikin, right? There are certain dinim derabanan, certain shvutim that Bein Hashmashot at the onset of Shabbat you would still be allowed to do because it's a safek. So the question is, I didn't manage to toivel my kelim on Erev Yom Tov. It just became tamei on Erev Yom Tov. Can you go and toivel them during Bein Hashmashot? We know Yom Tov itself you can't. So the Braita says no, you can't. It says Erev Yom Tov Bein Hashmashot. You cannot toivel it on at Bein Hashmashot. So we're going to see why. The pashtus is that it's because it might be Yom Tov already. Have a look at Rashi. Okay, we didn't read the long Rashi at the beginning, but the next Rashi on the Amud says, "Ein matpilin oto ben hashmashot mipnei shu safek laila v'nimsa matpil b'Yom Tov." Okay, if ben hashmashot is considered day and it's still erev Yom Tov, that's fine. But we said that we consider it to be night, at least out of safek, and therefore you can't toivel the kelim. Okay. Rabbi Shimon Shazuri Omer af b'chol ein matpilin oto. So Rabbi Shimon Shazuri says, hang on a second, this is not this idea that you cannot toivel ben hashmashot. That's got nothing to do with Yom Tov. That's even on a regular weekday, you cannot toivel your kelim ben hashmashot. Why? Mipnei shetzarech harev shemesh. Okay, so here we're going to see again. We're not talking about now tfilat kelim that a Jew bought from a non-Jew. We're talking about tfilat kelim from Tumah and Tahara. Now, in the laws of Tumah and Tahara, we know there is what's called harev shemesh, which means when a kli or an individual becomes tameh, so there are certain cases whereby the person goes to the mikvah, but that's not enough. You also need harev shemesh, which means after you've gone and toiveled, or after you've toiveled whatever it is, you need nightfall at the end of that day. Only then you'll be able to become tahor the next day. That's what's called harev shemesh, meaning nightfall has to pass. This concept of harev shemesh comes up in the first daf of Shas. I'm sure you remember the very beginning of Masechet Brachot, right? It talks about Meimatai Kriyat Shema, Mishash HaKohanim Niknasim Lechot Shumatam, and the Gemara there has a whole discussion about the idea of harev shemesh. Harev shemesh meaning person, for in whatever case, let's say a person has a 7-day period, and then on the 7th day they have to go and toivel, right? So then they'll go and toivel on the 7th day, and then from the 8th night they'll then be tahor again. Okay, so what's the issue? The issue is that if you go and toivel, so like this, if you toivel your kli during the day, so from the next night you can use it for taharot again. There's no problem. If you toivel it at night, right? So then you would have to wait until nightfall hasn't passed. You have to wait until the next night until you can use it. Okay, so what happens if you toivel the kli in Bein Hashmashot? So if Bein Hashmashot is daytime, so then I've had harev shemesh. Once I get to night, that's my harev shemesh, and I can use it. But if Bein Hashmashot is nighttime, so there's no harev shemesh. I have to wait until the next day. So people are going to get confused. People aren't going to know. This is going to lead to a takala. You're going to toivel your kli during Bein Hashmashot, and you're going to think it's tahor, but you have to wait the next day before it's tahor. So this is going to cause a takala. So that's what Rabbi Shimon Shazuri says. He says it's got nothing to do with Yom Tov. It's a more intrinsic problem of Ben Hashmashot, of harev shemesh. Now again, you're hearing this between these two reasons. This will be the nafkamina again for nowadays. Nowadays, if I have a kli which I need to, it's not tamei. Right? It's that I have a din of tfilat kelim of a kli which a Jew purchased from a non-Jew. If the reason I'm saying is because you can't do tfilat kelim on Yom Tov, well, that's the discussion we've already seen. And then according to some opinions, if you're allowed to toivel it nowadays on Yom Tov, you'd be allowed to toivel it Ben Hashmashot. Right? However, or maybe not, if you can't toivel on Yom Tov, then you can't toivel on Ben Hashmashot. If the entire reason for not toiveling on Ben Hashmashot is because what Rabbi Shimon Shazuri says, that because of harev shemesh, well, that certainly does not apply today because it's got nothing to do with Tumah and Tahara. And if it's based on that, then we might be able to say that nowadays during Ben Hashmashot you could toivel. Okay, it's going to be dependent on this machloket as well. So So it says like Gemara. So Rabbi Shimon Shazor Merav B'choin Mabedinotom Nesh Tzolch Harav Shemesh. So ask the Gemara, Tanakama lo bay Harav Shemesh. So why is that a machloket? Right? Rabbi Tanakama agrees that you need Harav Shemesh. So why? What's the machloket between them? Amarava Ashkachtinu LeRabanan Devei Rav Deyatvi v'Ka'amri B'machshavto nikeret mitoch ma'asav kamiflegei. So Rava says, so I came upon the Rabbanan and Bei Rav who were sitting and discussing, they were learning this sugya. So they said, right, the question is, what's the machloket between Tanakama and Rabbi Shimon Shazori? Tanakama says you can't toivel ben mashot erev Yom Tov. Rabbi Shimon Shazori says you can't toivel ben mashot ever. What's the machloket between them? Rabbanan, so the Rabbanan said, Rava says, I heard the Rabbanan say that perhaps the machloket between them is b'machshavto nikeret mitoch ma'asav kamiflegei. Can I say that a person's actions, right, machshavto nikeret mitoch ma'asav, his thought, his intent is clarified based on what he did. In other words, a person acts in a certain way and it's clear and it's obvious what the intent was. Can I say that or can I not say that? So let's explain. Let's explain what exactly the case is. The heichidami. What's the case? Again, our concern is that the person doesn't know that Bein Hashmashot is actually Safek Yom and Safek Laila, and he's still going to need Harev Shemesh. That's what Rabbi Shimon Shazuri is telling us. That therefore, don't let a person do Tefillah during Bein Hashmashot, because he's not going to know that it's a nightfall coming afterwards. Rabbanan are seemingly saying, maybe there's a case where we know out of the way that a person acts, that he does know that it's nightfall and it's not a problem. So what's the case? Okay, a person, nakit mana biyadei, he's holding a mana as a kli. He's holding a kli in his hand, okay, and he's running. He's running during Ben Hashmashot to go and toivel the said kli. So the question is, the fact that he's running along, does that indicate something about what he means and what he knows and what his intent is? So you could say, why is he running? He's running because he wants to get there before Bein Hashmashot, right? You see a person, if I'm walking to shul and it's 4:28, let's say this week, right? And I see a person running past me. So I know the person's running. He's running to go and have a mincha before Shkia, right? Or not to be late. Okay. So you see a person running before Bein Hashmashot. So why is he running? He's running because he wants to get there before Shkia. So he doesn't have to wait an extra day and he wants to toivel his kli. So therefore I don't have an issue and therefore he can go and he can toivel. I know the fact that he's running, that if he gets there a few minutes late, so he's going to know that it's Bein Hashmashot and he's going to have to wait. Right? Or maybe I don't say that. Right? So that seemingly is the machloket between them according to this opinion. He says, right? He's holding his kli in his hand and he's running to go and toivel. So one opinion holds, Tanakama, that since he's running, so he knows, therefore, that he needs Harev Shemesh. He's running in order to get there before Shkia. And the other opinion holds, Rabbi Shimon says, no, he's running because that's his melacha. He's just he's working or whatever it is, and he's running along, and that's the way that it's got nothing to do with Harev Shemesh. He doesn't know. He wants to go back and carry on his work or whatever it is. So, and therefore you should not allow anybody to do tefillah hatpala during Ben Hashmashot, because it will lead to a takala. So that is what Rava says. That is what he heard the Rabbanan discussing, and that's what they said was the machloket between them. Ve'amina lahu, but says Rava, that is incorrect. That is not the machloket. He says, Amina lahu, ana b'machshavto niker mitoch masav tukule amalo pligi. I hold no. This principle of machshavto niker mitoch masav, everybody agrees on. There is no machloket. So the fact is that right, the person's going and running. We assume he's going and running because he knows before, but he has to get there before Yom Tov, before Ben Hashmashot. That's not the issue. What is the machloket between them? Ki plige kegon ditame bepechot mikadasha, v'ata lakam medrabanan lashayule ובפחות מקדשה יטמא או לא. What is the machloket? He says the machloket is that something came into contact with, again, how does it become tameh? One of the ways is, let's say, come into contact with a sheretz, right? Or something which contracts a dead animal or something, or an insect, right, which causes tumah. But it came to what there was a measure that was pachot mika'adasha, right? Smaller than the amount, it's a very small size. That is like adasha is the minimum amount. That is the minimum size it's going to contract tumah. If it's a piece that is smaller than that, it's not going to contract any tumah. So this person has their kli, they're not sure if it's tameh or not. It came into contact with something that was smaller than an adasha. And this person now is coming to Rabbanan, and he's asking the question. He's saying, does pachot mikadasha make tameh or not? If a person comes and asks such a question, okay, that is an indication that we should not let them do tefillah bein hashmashot. What does one got to do with the other? That's the continuation. We're going to have to see that tomorrow because we're out of time. Okay, so we'll pick it up from there tomorrow. B'ezrat Hashem, 8:45. Have a wonderful day, everybody. See you then.
Have a good day.
Thank you.